Hello all, today I'm going to show you how to generate a map template using Maproom 70 in 3ds Max. This template will be used to form the base template of our model, that being the site model of Port Melbourne. So to start, we click on, make sure you have the Maproom 70 plugin installed, and just a bit of a reminder, you do have to pay for it. So with that being said, we click on Maproom. In regards to the Maproom, installing the Maproom thing, once you've got the plugin, it's just a matter of just dragging it onto the screen, and in most cases. So with that, so now that it's open, we click on, so we've got different options here for presets, but for us it's going to be OpenStreetMap and Satellite. And so you got a combination here of OpenStreetMap and Satellite, so which is basically the two above, and then you've got the two Satellite and Terrain and OpenStreetMap separately if you need. So for us, we'll be using OpenStreetMap and Satellite. So we click on that, and as you can see on the screen, a blip has appeared, a green blip, which is basically indicating that the plugin is running and ready to generate. So with that, we find so basically we click on map space, which I'm in right now, and then we find our location by name. So we're working with Albert Park, which is so we're sort of working within the area that's sort of halfway between Port Melbourne and sort of halfway. So to get it all in, we just set the location as Albert Park. So Foot Street Albert Park is the halfway point. So it's the optimal. So the optimal location is Foot Street in Albert Park. Once we find our location, we click on it, make sure it's highlighted, and select OK. And then to generate, we update the space. And the second step is to generate the terrain. So with that, we want an area and width of 4 meters, and width and an output pixel resolution of 3000 to 4000 pixels, depending on what you're comfortable with. And then an image source is Mapbox Satellite. We select our image source as Mapbox Satellite, and the zoom to about 18. And our terrain heights to Mapbox Terrain, and then our our zoom to 14, and you can adjust the terrain mesh density if you want to. Mind you, you don't have to do what I've done. It's just a sort of a tutorial, on how I approach things. So in other words, you can basically do it without the terrain if you wanted to, which might be a bit better for the different building heights. As you can see, we're going to wait for about five minutes to let the thing load. So we're waiting. We're waiting. Another thing is the 3ds Max will freeze while Well, Maproom is generating the image, the satellite map and the terrain. So not to be alarmed if the program does jam. So with that being said, our map is generated. As you can see, we've got a nice clean map of Port Melbourne and Albert Park. And as you can see, we'll be working with, so our area we'll be working with sort of around here up to about Bay Street, Bay Street in Port Melbourne, which is there. So mainly around the Kerford Road area. The next step is to generate our OSM data, OpenStreetMap data. So to do that, same as before, we set our width and height to 4 meters. And to generate, you can do it by layer, but in some cases, some of the buildings might be on different layers, so it's better to do as opposed to just being on one layer, that one set of building layers. So to be better to be safe than sorry, you just select the full OSM and you can just switch the layers off. And then we align shapes to ground plane. And then mass example. So basically, style sheets, we have several different examples. So you've got a fill example, which is basically an example with fills. An example or system mass example, which is an example with masses, which is what we're going to be using. And OSM style sheet, which is the default. And then a stroke example, which is basically strokes. Basically, style sheet with strokes. So for us, we'll just be using the masses to generate the buildings. Now, with that being said, we apply the style sheet. And then we download and draw our OSM data. The thing with the apply style sheet thing is it doesn't give you a sort of an indication of if it's been done or not, as opposed to the OSM data being little loaded with little progress bar, as you can see, the little green progress bar as you can see on the screen now. So with that, it is generating. So we're part way. We're about 3/4, about a quarter left. And as you can see, we've got all of our data generated. So with that, we can close Maproom 70, and then we can start sorting our layers out. So as you can see, we can turn off all these additional layers, so water, amenity, roads, and all that sort of stuff. But however, some of the stuff like roads and that might come in useful later as we progress through this assignment. So we can turn all of these off. Oh, I forgot to turn the buildings off. But I'll show you a quick way of turning them back on. The difference between this and most other CAD programs is that when you turn a layer off, it completely hides it. So to turn it back on, you click on hide. You click on hide all layers, and then click on it again. So click on hide all layers once, which will basically turn everything off, and then click on it again to reinstate everything. So with that, as you can see, our buildings are there. So as the terrain is basically being sort of densified, adjusted so sort of to give a sort of an artificial hilly gradient, if you know what I mean. We've got basically some of the buildings will be hiding underneath. So the best thing to do in that case is just to move the satellite image down. And if you have to, you can always go back later into Maproom and regenerate it. So from here, we've got all of our buildings. They didn't generate, so they've generated as lines, line weight. So we'll try fill, see if that helps. As you can see, the OSM style sheet right now is basically the more data intensive. So basically, so what it's going to do is it's basically going to upload all the different layers and all the buildings. So if that, we'll just stick with the OSM style sheet, the default, because at least it's got a bit of terrain in it, and we can easily distinguish the roads. So we can delete stuff if we have to. Mess example. Try that again. And the mass example does come in handy if, for whatever reason, you've done the full style. If you've generated a full style sheet and some of the buildings don't appear, it does come in handy. So as you can see, there are some buildings that are sort of popping up that weren't there before. And the good thing about it is the heights are all correct. Whereas when I tried it out the other day, the building heights weren't sort of generating. So as I was saying, this sort of takes the full data, whereas with the mass example, it's just basic mass, and you got to basically key in the heights. So if you do have to key in the heights, what the usual rule of thumb is, so for example, so you can see the tallest building that we've got generated, so you can see that OSM does generate the buildings by level height, by number of floors. So the tallest building that we've got generated is 32 stories. So to adjust the height, we times 32 by 4. We'll make our typical floor height around 3 meters. So 32 times 3 equals 96, which is sort of a rough height. It doesn't have to be exact, but if you want the height to be exact, like, you can always go to sources like Emporus and Skyscraper Center and a couple of other sites to find them out. I will post them in the video. So if you need to, you can always refer to it. And then to adjust the heights, we can either adjust the outer amount or the inner amount. The difference is with the inner amount, it will basically, if the building is underneath the terrain, it will basically extend it down, and then you'll have to manually drag it up. And then for the however, we've got the outer amount shown. So to extend it above the terrain, we use the outer amount. So with that being said, that is pretty much it. Hope you found it enjoyable and informative, and see you in the next tutorial. Oh, and also, just before we finish up, another thing is that to convert all the layers to grey, if you want to, we click on freeze. And this applies to everything, so buildings and the like. So now I can finally say that is it. Thank you for watching.